I'm so thrilled to be here. I was told we are in the size of a football field, so we're going to get some exercise today. It is such a blessing to see all your beautiful faces. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning. All right, so going into the next slide, I want to start by sharing we are here to have a quick conversation about what it means to empower voices, all voices, with inclusive leadership practices. And we are here because we share a belief that all young people deserve to belong and to thrive. This right here, right? Okay, there we go, thank you. I imagine a world in which every single human wakes up feeling safe and has a felt deep knowing of what it feels like to belong. That's the world that I dream of for my child's future. And that's what I dedicate every single day to working toward, right? Everything that I do, whether it's teaching, coaching, consulting, standing here with you, it's all to further this dream that one day Ember, my daughter, will live in a world that is more just, more inclusive, and creates conditions for more belonging for all. So this is me and my wife and my little one. And my journey started out actually many moons ago. I was a camp goer. I went to camp during some of the more difficult summers of my life. And I think about my summers at camp as life-giving. And in moments, they were the one place that was like a sanctuary for me. So since then, I went on many, many years later. Almost 2 decades ago, I started my journey in the classroom as a teacher. Then I went on to school leadership. There I am with my team. And I've just been on this mission to figure out what does it take to get people to work better together. I think that started at camp because I saw that it could be possible. And then I thought, why does this not feel this way everywhere else, right? And so at Spark Equity in Action, we believe that everyone's story matters, that intentional conversations are vehicles for change, and that this work of doing inclusion, belonging, equity work, it requires 3 things. It requires some critical reflection, some intentional action, and it requires systems change too. So I've been trying to figure out what is it going to take to get us there for many, many years. And it comes down to this deep belief that Margaret Wheatley reminds us of. She says, I believe we can change the world if we start listening to one another again. Simple, honest, human conversations. Not mediation, negotiation, problem solving, debate, or public meetings, but simple, truthful conversations where we each have a chance to speak, where we each feel heard, and where we each listen well. So I think that you're here in the right place if you care about your team, if you care about being an inclusive leader, and we're going to talk about what we all have a different belief around what leadership means, so I'm going to offer an idea around that, and that you want your camp environment to feel inclusive and safe for all. Is that fair to say? Thumbs up? Head nods? Yeah? Claps? Snaps? I see y'all. Okay. So this is our space. Get comfy. If you have something to write with, that would be awesome. This is just a quick logistical note. I am a former teacher, so I do want to give you a heads up about what you're going to experience. It might be helpful if you're not like a pen paper person, you might grab your notepad from your phone. We'll have a reflection activity in just a few minutes. That's a long way to say. And I will have some follow-up resources at the end. If you're interested, you'll have an opportunity to get those. So we're here because we're all connected to ACA. And I just wanted to remind us, this statement here really spoke to my heart. In today's world, the benefits of building character skills and traits such as gratitude, kindness, creativity, curiosity, perseverance, resiliency, empathy, courage, and teamwork could not be more important. That has rung true all morning as I was listening to all the other speakers before me. We are here because we believe that camp is a place to move those character traits forward, that we can make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. So what we're going for today in this time and space that we get to have together with me is to learn some frameworks and some strategies that might help ignite more inclusion in your context. Everybody's context is so different, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to discover some 3 power moves for empowering voices within your team. And then we're also going to each identify one next step. And I will be the first to say, I'm right on this journey with you. I will always be a work in progress, always learning. So I'm always trying to identify one step for myself and set intentions to keep the learning going. And then I invite you to try out the Spark Stance. The Spark Stance is what we call at Spark Equity in Action, kind of our community agreements. So if you are willing, I invite you to please try out the stance, to show up authentically in this time we have together, to pause and listen to ourselves, to each other, to ask questions with curiosity, to respect the diversity in the room, and to kindly expect a little bit of conflict, just a little bit, all with intentionality. Does that sound okay? All right, cool. All right, so we're going to do a quick connections activity just to get a sampling, a little flavor of the different perspectives that we have in the room. So I'm going to invite you to raise your hand if you align with the thing that I'm going to say. And I'm going to give you a little sample here. So I've been told that, and this is my experience too, some of us are like natural huggers. If I see somebody, give me a hug. And other people are like, I would like a little bit of personal distance. I'm more of a high five, fist bump, elbow bump, or just a head nod. So we have variety in the room, and these textures and flavors of who we are influence how we show up with each other, right? So raise your hand if you are the hugger. I love a good hug. I'm so happy to see you. Give me a big hug. I love it. That's like half the room. I love it. Okay, raise your hand if you're more of the high five, fist bump. I like a little personal space. I love it. Other half, I see you. And what if you're right in the middle and you're like, it really depends, Rachel. I don't know. It depends on the energy, how I'm feeling that day. Cool. I'm kind of with y'all. That's me right now. All right, cool. How about coffee, tea? Okay, and there will be a third option if you're like, neither. Don't put me in a box. Raise your hand if you've already had at least a cup of coffee today. Coffee is your go-to. All right, I see y'all. Those are my people. Raise your hand if you are more of a tea drinker. Okay, tea, please, not coffee. Coffee might get you a little too jittery or too many things. I've felt that. Definitely in pregnancy, no coffee. How about in the middle? It depends. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. Okay, love it. And how about neither? Water all the way. H2O is my friend. I have so much respect for you all. So much respect. That is some real willpower. Just natural born energy. I love it. Okay, how about sweet, savory snacks? If you're in a meeting, it's been a long day, what is your go-to? Where are my sugar tooth friends? We like candy, cookies, anything sweet will make us a little bit happier. Love it. Okay, how about savory? Savory all the way, not much of a sweet tooth. And then for all my friends in the middle, I love both, depends on my mood. Give me one of each and I'll be the happiest. I love it. I love it. Okay, see, we got so much variety in here. And now you see your colleagues a little bit. I always love this because I can know what kind of snacks to bring to the next meeting based on how my friends and colleagues respond. Okay, now this one hits home for me because I'm really old school. So if you were old school as well, and the image on the right is your friend, where you like pen and paper. If you're taking notes at a meeting, you would prefer to jot things down on an old school pen, paper. There's something it does. It just sticks in my brain better when I write it down, okay? Yep, I see you. And if you're like, I really don't understand that, I'm tablet all the way. Save the environment. We need less paper. Okay, I have respect for you all. My brain just doesn't quite work that well. See, I love it. They're like, I'm taking notes right here. Here's my laptop. I love it. How about in the in-between? A little bit of both. Because I do lean that way too. You know, we got to function in today's society. Got you. Okay. Now, my last but not least, raise your hand if you personally went to camp growing up. And that is partly why you're here. I love it. Raise your hand if you did not go to camp growing up, but you now see the life-changing power of camp. I love that. Beautiful. Is there anyone in between on that one? That one's kind of a yes-no. Could be like, I dabbled. My sister was in the Girl Scout troop, so I was like in between, and I always never know how to answer that because I went to all her meetings. Anyway, here we are. All right. So thank you for sharing. We already just saw a little sampling of the diversity in the room. All right, so a lot of my work, especially right now in this moment, is demystifying this conversation about what diversity means. Bringing all different perspectives to the table matters, right? And I want to start by sharing a little bit about the name of Spark Equity in Action. I can't help but touch on the metaphor of fire. Does anybody know the 3 elements that make a fire burn? Yeah, I see some hands. Okay, so we got heat, we got oxygen, and we got fuel, right? In the absence of one of those things, the fire will not ignite. Too much of one of those things, and the fire will fizzle out, and it won't last. So I see this work and all of us being here together as almost like a charge, right? We have this opportunity to keep bringing light into the world, to keep thinking about what are the ingredients that bring more light, more inclusion, more belonging into the world. And what we have discovered over this past decade is that there are 3 ingredients that really help keep the fire burning, if you will, to keep the metaphor going, to help keep teams feeling better together. The first is activating awareness. The second is intentional action. And the third is integrating accountability. And at the heart of everything that we do, we're trying to bridge this gap that we've all probably experienced. Raise your hand if you've ever heard someone say, "That wasn't my intention." Or, "I didn't mean to come across that way. That wasn't really, you're not hearing me," right? This happens across all experiences at the one-on-one, personal level, in our team meetings, in big organizations, policies, practices. We all have intention gaps. And I've been on a mission to figure out how do we bridge this gap at all of the levels so that we can be better together. It turns out having explicit, nuanced conversations about not just being aware, not just reading the book or attending the workshop or the lecture, but actually internalizing that message and then activating a choice to do something differently, right? And then that activation moves us into intentional action. And then the intentional action leads to integrating accountability, which sustains the light. It sustains the sense of belonging. So, in case that, there's a lot of conversations out there about this particular topic right now, so I just wanted to share a few stats. One big study that came out by Deloitte said that organizations with inclusive cultures are 1.7 times more likely to be innovation leaders. Diverse teams with inclusive leaders make better decisions 87% of the time. That was a big study that came out with Forbes. And then organizations that prioritize equity outperform their peers by 25% on profitability. So this isn't just a hypothetical, feel-good, warm and fuzzy stuff, right? There's a business case for why it's important to talk about inclusion explicitly. And what I believe, I said I would offer this, is doesn't matter what your position is, we are all leaders. If you're in this room, you are a leader because you took responsibility for what matters to you and you chose to be here. Right? And that is a gift. And so I see every person who steps up, speaks up, does the right thing, has that courageous conversation as a leader. So let's jump in. I'd like to start by inviting you to think of a leader who's had a really big impact on your life. And for you, it might help to close your eyes for 10 seconds and just really picture their face or faces. Think about someone who's really had a tremendous impact on your life. And feel free to just shout into the room any attributes about that person. Like for me, they had a relentless belief in me. Anybody else want to just shout anything to the room? It's going to sound a little chaotic, but that's okay. They inspired me. That's another one. Trust. What else? Love. What else? Kindness, compassion, honesty, vulnerable. Yeah. It's not the strategic plan or the big email or the big meeting that we oftentimes remember when we think of the leaders who inspire us the most, right? It's those moments of everyday, micro moments actually, the choices of consistently following through, showing up. For me, the leaders that inspire me held up the mirror for me. Sometimes we had to have hard conversations. I was given feedback, but it was given with love. It really, really just takes one spark. And I can get real cheesy, and so I might. But I really deeply believe now more than ever, we sometimes need to be reminded that it's that one moment of kindness, love, compassion, what I heard you all say, that can change the trajectory of someone's day. Sometimes it's somebody's life because of a choice to be vulnerable, to have that conversation, to say, I see you, I thank you, right? It really just takes one moment, and that one spark can light something in somebody else. And so this work really has life-changing impacts. And so to expand on these 3 pillars of inclusive leadership, I just want to share a couple things, right? What we've noticed at Spark Equity in Action is that to build an inclusive, thriving culture, these pillars of practicing self-awareness, the activating awareness, is about taking time to not just be aware, but to activate something within ourselves. Like, I'm going to check my bias. I'm going to think before talking. I'm going to recognize who's missing from the table, metaphorically or physically, right? Leadership, decision-making. Intentional action might look like choosing intentional practices for inclusion and belonging in the way that we speak, in the way that we show up with each other. And then lastly, integrating accountability. This is about measuring progress. How do we make sure this stuff sustains itself so that when you're no longer there, the feeling of belonging still exists? That was my challenge to myself, was really holding that. And so we're going to jump into the 3 A's. This is going to ground our conversation here. Let's jump into activating awareness. And so this is the activity I told you about. It's called the identity wheel. And I invite you, if you happen to have a pen or paper, I see my fellow pen and paper friends already have it out. If you don't, you can grab a notepad on your phone, or you can just think in your head. It's all good either way. The bottom line of this activity is for us to think about the fact that our identity really influences how people experience us, whether we know it or not. And so we're activating awareness to think about all the different layers. For me, I tend to draw everything in circles. So my preferred way of doing this is I draw a big circle, and it's not super linear. It drives my wife crazy. She's much more of like we need everything to be straight. I need a ruler. This stresses me out. So if you are more like Leah, my wife, you might draw 2 lines and just have one side is professional, one side is personal. And again, if you'd prefer to just think about this and not jot it down, that's cool too. So for the personal side, you're going to think about, this might be the bottom half, you might think about your identity personally, the things that you are, no matter where you are. Everywhere you go, there you are. And for your professional hat, you might think about the attributes that define why you do what you do. And there is no right or wrong way to do this. Everybody's circle identity wheel looks different. Here's an example of what mine looks like. We're only going to have 60 seconds, so that's the other part, is that it kind of primes your unconscious mind. So this is my example. In the top half, the first words and phrases that came up for me as I was thinking about the core attributes that define me were, I'm a relentless believer in human potential. If I can see that little spark, then I'm going to work to believe in something better. I'm an educator, facilitator, bridge builder. I always have been. My mom says that when I was really little, I was just always trying to get everybody to come together on the playground, everybody of different backgrounds working together. And then bringing the leader, systems thinking, the CEO hat, that also is a part of the lenses that I bring. And then on the bottom half, these are the personal attributes that are with me everywhere. So being a lesbian, being a wife, being a nature lover, camp goer. I was raised in Texas, so that really informs the lenses that I have. I am the mom of a fiery 3-year-old who has a ton of energy and strong beliefs about everything, including these sparkly shoes. This was her, she insisted that I wear these shoes. I'm also a cisgendered, able-bodied white person in this world. And those 3 attributes of my personal identity are like wearing an invisible cloak of privilege everywhere I go. These 3 attributes of who I am have afforded me an invisible escalator in many of the systems that I have operated in. And until doing this work, right, 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, working as a teacher, I had not realized how much these attributes and parts of my personal identity were influencing how I showed up in the classroom and in my school, right? So these are just some examples. Again, there's no right or wrong way. Here is a starter list of some potential categories, right? You don't, again, no wrong way to do this, and you don't have to complete it all. You're just going to have 60 seconds to do your own, and you can pull out your notepad or just think. and do some breathing for 60 seconds, and we'll come back together in 60 seconds. Thank you. About 30 more seconds. Five more seconds. All right. Thank you for trying that on. For those of you who jotted it down pen and paper, I saw some people taking deep breaths, closing their eyes. I saw some folks jotting stuff down on your tablets and phones. Thank you. Whatever works for you, thank you for taking that minute. I just invite you to check in with yourself. What was it like to think about your identity in that way? Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to kind of think in two realms when everything feels like one sometimes. And other times, it can be really helpful to think about all the different hats you wear. Just by show of hands, raise your hand if it was a little bit harder to think about the professional side of your identity wheel, okay? There's always kind of a split between two different ways. Raise your hand if it was a little bit more difficult to think about the personal side. Okay, thank you for being honest. And raise your hand if it wasn't difficult. That was interesting, that you enjoyed it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for trying that on. It's something that we could spend a lot more time on, but this is a practice to activate awareness. It's beyond just knowing, okay, there's this phenomena of unconscious bias. We could spend 30 minutes talking about the research on unconscious bias, but I find that it's much more helpful to practice the action of activating awareness and thinking, how might these lenses influence and impact how people experience me? And to tell you a quick story, it wasn't until my first year of leadership that I discovered that I had a lot of fear of saying the wrong thing. I was lucky enough to have a leadership coach, and I discovered that I was a people pleaser and a conflict avoider really quickly once I had a leadership role, because I was shying away from some of the harder conversations, and my coach was like, "What's that about? What, when we're in this space, you share so openly, and when we're in that space, you step back." So in that coaching relationship, I discovered that I actually had a fear of saying the wrong thing. I didn't want to offend somebody. And because of that, I did not feel comfortable talking about my racial identity, my privileges, because I was afraid that it would come out wrong, and then I didn't want to burn any bridges with anybody. And so I just stayed more comfortable and talked more about the technical stuff. And my coach said, "Well, you're missing an opportunity for building trust with people if you're not vulnerable. And it's okay, you don't have to be perfect, but you've got to start something, or the conversation about equity it can't just be an intellectual conversation. It's personal for us. So we got to get more comfortable talking about who we are and how those lenses inform how we show up to the conversations about inclusion and belonging, right? And so it was in that activated awareness. Back then, I didn't have the activity of the identity wheel, but it was a similar activity where he was asking me some simple questions, and it was in those micro moments that I realized I need to set some intentions. I need you as my coach to help me, hold me accountable for having some of these conversations, and I had to work on, exactly what I was going to say and how I was going to say it, and slowly but surely, with incremental practice, it never got easy, but it got less hard with practice, right? And so that activating awareness in a simple activity like that, it really can lead us to an entry point. A lot of us are really craving the real conversation. A lot of us are craving moving beyond small talk and beyond the technical stuff. And sometimes we as the leaders, again, we're all leaders here, just start the conversation and having a common text like the identity wheel or something that's like a neutral thing that we're all doing, that can be a really great vehicle to keep everybody at the table having the conversation. Okay, so let's move into intentional action. To me, a lot of intentional action began with my coach holding up the mirror for me and really saying, hey, you said you wanted to do this, but then I observed you in this meeting and you didn't say that thing. Or you said it differently than you had planned to. What was underneath that? What was that about, right? So a lot of the times, intentional action is not this big, again, this huge strategic plan. Sometimes it's holding up the mirror for others. Sometimes it's listening deeply and hearing what's underneath the words that people say. And so what I say at Spark is the first step is always that I start with myself. And so as leaders, I'm going to invite us to think about what we call the 5 C's of inclusive leadership. These are the steps that we take intentional action around. So there's clarity, change management, conflict management, communicating with consciousness, and community facilitation. These are all the ways that we can take action. And there's even more ways to take action, but we've studied over the years in terms of the leaders who are really leading the way on inclusion and belonging. Usually they have skill sets in these areas. And so, on a scale of 1 to 5, again, interactive piece, you don't have to put it high in the air, but you can put it down low, however you want. It's more of a self-check with yourself. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much can you relate to this statement? So 1 would be, I don't relate at all, and 5 would be, I really relate, okay? And you can just, whatever is comfortable for you, you can show on your hand. I care deeply about creating brave spaces, but I don't have a clear vision or goal for inclusion because I can't quite find the time to be reflective. So just check in with yourself. These are things verbatim that we've heard from clients, and so we're just lifting it up to remind us that we're not alone. All right, thank you. Some people are putting their numbers up high, some people are putting them down low. It's all good. So this is about clarity of vision, right? The second one, change management, on a scale of 1 to 5, do a quick self-check-in. It feels like I'm drinking water through a fire hose with all these changes. I don't have the training to be as adaptive as I'd like. Right? There's a whole body of work on change management. A lot of us just instinctively have a little bit more or less comfort when change arises for various reasons. So this is a good self-check-in with how you feel about rapid changes, navigating changes. Okay, next one, community facilitation. I notice my meetings don't go as I'd hoped. I have no training on facilitation, so I'm not sure if I can hold space for discussions on inclusion and equity. And this was a big one for me when I first started out. This one was the thing that I needed a lot of support around. So give yourself a check-in, 1 to 5. Conflict management, this is another one. Conflict makes me uncomfortable. I tend to avoid hard conversations, especially ones about DEI. That's a quick self-check-in with yourself. 1 would be not at all. 5, I very much relate with this. And then lastly, communicating with consciousness. I know I have blind spots. I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing because I don't want to offend someone. And so that'll be 1 if you don't agree at all. 5, very much so. Just a quick check-in to see where you're at on a comfort and competency level. Cool. So just a quick check-in with yourself. Notice what that sparked for you, even just thinking about your leadership in that way. Did you have a lot of 4s and 5s for any 1 or 2? And context matters, right? So this is very unique for your context. It's just an opportunity to activate that awareness as we talk about at Spark. And what we often say is what gets in the way of our intentions matching our impact are our unconscious biases. And this is a quote from the author of the book Subliminal, How Your Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior. They say, we can't avoid mentally absorbing the categories defined by the society in which we live. They permeate the news, television, programming, films, all aspects of our culture. And because our brains naturally categorize, we are vulnerable to acting on the attitudes that those categories represent. It's a mouthful, but the bottom line is there's inherent vulnerability because we all have unconscious biases. It's core to being human. And so how do we make meaning of that? Has anybody seen this video clip? It's called The Awareness Test. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Okay, cool. So this is a great example of the awareness test in action, of we might think that we're up to something, and then something else might happen. So we're going to cue it. It's just maybe a minute or two. We're going to do this together. If you've seen it already, just notice what surfaces this time. Thank you.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
Anybody
The
get it?
answer is 13.
13? Yeah? Okay.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. My favorite part is this is brought to you by the Department of Transportation in the UK. Keeping us on our toes. Anybody through that experience, did anybody, if you watched it for the first time, feel confused? When you were told to do one thing, and then there was this kind of back thing happening, right? Yeah, thank you for being honest. A lot of times this reminds us that, there are a couple things, right? We could actually have a whole 30-minute conversation about this because there's a lot to talk about. But the key thing that I want to remind us is that a lot of times when we are doing equity and inclusion work, there is a need to have hyper-awareness of potentially the things that we may not see. And that's really hard because we can only see what we can see, right? And so we got to keep people in our corner. This was, for me at least, having a coach to hold up the mirror to say, hey, there was a moonwalking bear in that meeting and you didn't see it because you were so focused on your agenda and you didn't notice that there was this whole thing happening, right? This is why we need each other in this work. That we only can see what we can see, and that in the work of wanting a culture of belonging and inclusion, we have to have space for multiple perspectives, for other people to support and bring their perspectives to the table. And so to build on this story just very briefly, when I first started out, I moved from being a people pleaser, conflict avoider, starting coaching, to then identifying as a recovering people pleaser, recovering conflict avoider, working actively to get more comfortable and vulnerable. And a lot of times it started with little small conversations. And then from there, I slowly, again, it was these micro moments, but I started restructuring meetings. This was my intentional action work. I started thinking about the check-in prompts. I started thinking about ways to bring more voices to the table, having like a rotating mic facilitation. These small ways, small micro steps that would have macro impacts when done consistently over time. So as we get to the last one, integrating accountability, I found that this was the hardest one to do because this one did require that consistency, the follow-through, and the systems. And that can be challenging. My goal was always to be a little bit more aware and to be a little bit more intentional in my action when I first started out. And that is still true to this day, 15 years later. And every day the goal is to just say, did I do the thing? Did I actually take that little step, right, with more intentionality? Did I ask for feedback? Did I bring voices to the table? The 3 power moves, as we were reflecting and talking in preparation for this with the amazing ACA team, it seemed helpful to think about what are some 3 power moves that could integrate accountability, some steps that we could take. One is modeling, leading by example, doing the thing you would like to see. So modeling that cultural humility, vulnerability, doing the learning in public that was, for me, was so hard in the beginning, but that got a little bit easier the more that I did over time. Starter action steps that you could try or that I tried and that have been useful for me is the first is admitting when you don't know. It is okay to be like, that's a really great question. Let me think about that. I'm learning still. Another thing is demonstrating that growth mindset. The way that we encourage others to learn from mistakes is by doing it ourselves. And so being that that champion for growth mindset. Normalizing conversations, regularly discussing inclusion in team meetings, remembering that those micro moments have macro impacts. And there's no perfect way to do it. Sometimes we just got to get started anyway. This is when I started to get better at saying, this is a draft. It's not polished. This is counterproductive for me as a recovering perfectionist as well. Sharing what you're learning instead of having this polished thing, that can be really useful as a way to bring us together, right? So taking that time to learn in public, saying, hey, this is a growth edge for me. I've never done this before. I'm going to try this. That can be really useful. It gives others permission to do the same. Another way is, how do we actually get clear about how we're amplifying underrepresented voices? What are the steps that we're taking, those micro steps? And some things we might consider: hosting listening sessions. One of our biggest power tools as leaders is our listening. It is one of the things that so many people say over the years about leaders that really inspired them. They really were great listeners. They really made people feel as though they were heard and that they mattered. So opportunities to host regular open forums. Informal advisory groups is another way, inviting diverse voices, all voices, to share feedback regularly in a structured way. And thinking about clear feedback channels. This was a big one for me when integrating accountability. Creating an anonymous feedback form was a big one, and inviting input in a very regular and systematic way. That really demonstrated that your voice matters, and then I would always learn, it took time, and it wasn't easy at first, but to circle back, hey, this is what I heard. Thank you for taking the time. People really like to feel seen when they are told that their feedback was really reviewed closely. And then giving platform time, rotating who leads meetings, that rotating mic, rotating facilitation, activities and discussions. And then lastly, developing diverse leadership pipelines. How do we start that? To get started anyway, everybody's on a different place in their journey, and this is a big conversation, but one way, these are some tried and true steps no matter where you are, is finding mentor up opportunities, pairing junior staff with experienced folks, creating mini leadership roles. This one is really fantastic in terms of just thinking about small leadership tasks that help people feel seen and heard, valued. Inclusive hiring, expanding recruitment beyond the usual networks, asking people, hey, who haven't we connected with? Who might be a good partner? How could we do some more listening to build relationship? And then lastly, pathways to promotion, creating those clear steps for leadership and growth development. So these micro moments, again, that really have lasting impacts. So as we begin to close out, I want to offer that inclusive leadership is far from a one-time initiative. It is a continuous journey of awareness, action, and accountability. It is a journey that I am on every single day because the learning never ends, because the context is constantly changing, right? And it involved, for me at least, it has involved changing habits, really truly thinking differently about how I structure meetings, how I think of meetings as prime real estate for group dynamics to come together, how I think about being a little bit less attached to certain ways of doing things, being more open to new possibilities and learning out loud. And it's important that we all have a community of support. We all need guidance, support, encouragement, empowerment. And so I invite you to join me in taking one next step. Like, as we've explored quite a bit, we've talked about awareness, action, accountability, the identity wheel, the 3 power moves. There are a lot of seeds that I've planted. So I invite you to think of one small thing you might do after today. And if you really want to accept a challenge, you might pair up with someone in this room to serve as an accountability partner. Say, hey, hold me accountable. I want to talk about that identity wheel thing with you. Or, hey, could you, I want to read this thing together. Could you be my accountability buddy? Or, hey, I want to hear your why for inclusion. Can we take time to do that? And then continue learning. I will have a breakout session this afternoon here in a little while, so if you want to keep the learning going, we're going to talk more about unconscious bias, and we're going to have a community building game and experience. So if you're interested in that, come on and join me. And I invite you in the rest of this time together to continue to try out the Spark stance. I have so appreciated hearing a little bit, this is again a football field. I can't hear everybody in the back, but it's been such a pleasure to be connected with you all. The energy at ACA is so amazing. You all do such important work, and you really are that spark of light for your communities, and so I thank you deeply for being in the work that you do and being in this world. So I have a couple little gifts for those of you who want the follow-up checklist that I think connect to both the 5 C's and the 3 power moves. If you're like, cool, I'd like to see that packet, it's just some goodies, you're welcome to scan this QR code. It will both be the packet with the follow-up resources and a 7-day, 8-day free trial to our online learning platform. If you're interested in just learning more about our work, you're welcome to. And if you want to offer any feedback, any 2 cents on how today was for you, you are welcome to scan this QR code and share anything that's on your heart and mind after our time together. I'm always truly working to hear from and do that integrated accountability work myself. And I will be around today, this afternoon. But I am so thankful for you all, for the time together. If you're interested in staying connected, there's some stuff that you can check and stay connected with me. I am thankful for this opportunity, and I've really enjoyed being here with you all today. All right. I will leave you with this quote. Beautiful people, where does the future come from? From Margaret Wheatley. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right.